In this video, we will walk through the setup process for the CMS HCC risk adjustment models. You can follow along with this video as you set up the process with your own beneficiary data. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, pays plans based on the risk of the beneficiaries they enroll. CMS risk adjustment is used to ensure that CMS pays plans appropriately and accurately for enrollees' expected health costs. The risk scores are based on both the health status and demographics of an enrollee. The risk scores are then used to adjust payments for each beneficiary's expected expenditures. CMS publishes their risk adjustment models. The models are made available for download in SAS format from the CMS website. We are going to start at cms.gov and navigate to the risk adjustment page. Be sure to select the appropriate version of the risk adjustment model. In our case, we will download the model software package from 2022. Within the package, models for HCC, ESRD, and RX HCC are all included. We will use the HCC model in today's example. Unzip your files to a desired location. The software package has a number of files, including the software description document, with instructions that will be our guide to setting up the files and data correctly to run the model. The first step outlined in the instructions is to update the file extension of the 7 SAS programs from .txt to .sas, so they are recognized as SAS programs. Next, we'll set up a folder structure to organize the input data, project files, and expected output. In total, I'll create 4 folders: input, output, programs, and transport. I'll first move the SAS programs to the programs folder. Notice that we have 2 additional nondescript files. The instructions provided by CMS outline that these 2 files are transport files that contain the format library and the HCC coefficients dataset that will be used within this project. I'll move these 2 files to the transport folder. And rather than simply changing the file extension as we did with the programs, these 2 files require a conversion using SAS code. Within the software description document, you'll find this code to convert these transport files into their usable formats. I'll grab this code and launch SAS to update and run the conversion code. With my instance of SAS, I am using Enterprise Guide, which is a Windows-based SAS programming application. In Enterprise Guide, you can create projects to access and analyze data. In purple, you'll see that there are 4 placeholders for user-defined file paths to locate the 2 transport files and identify where we want the resulting format library and HCC coefficients to be placed. First, I'll remove these 2 unnecessary comments, and then I'll update those placeholders with our recently created transport folder file path. With these updates, I'll now run my code, and I'll head over to the transport folder to confirm that we now have the two usable files. The software description document next addresses the topic of input files. The two input files are supplied by you as the user, and these files are then ingested by a SAS program to calculate the risk scores for each beneficiary. One input file is the person file, and it contains demographic and enrollment info for each beneficiary. The other input file is a diagnosis file that contains a row for every diagnosis a beneficiary has. Be sure to review the software description document in detail to understand the requirements for the form and content of these two files. My two input files are currently stored as CSV files, and I'll move them to my input folder. Now I'll go back to Enterprise Guide to import the data. The CMS programs expect the data in SAS dataset format. So to import the two CSV files, I'll first assign a library to refer to the input folder where those two CSV files are currently sitting. I'll name the library input, and I'll grab the input folder file path. Next, I'll grab each of the two input files to convert the CSV file to a SAS dataset, starting with the diagnosis file. And I will save them to this newly created input library. Next, I'll do the exact same with the person dataset. We can view each of these data sets. The diagnosis file has just two variables, the member ID and the ICD-10 codes. The person table, meanwhile, has the member ID, the date of birth, sex, and other Medicaid and entitlement information. The last step outlined in the description document is to update our main SAS program. This program reads the two input files and calls one central macro program that in turn calls a series of 5 external macro programs to calculate the risk scores for each beneficiary. In order to calculate the risk scores, SAS needs to know the file paths of where the input is located and where the output should go. The comments section has placeholders for user-defined file paths. I'll update these with the file paths of the folder structure we recently created at the top of this video. As a final step, we will run the SAS program to calculate risk scores for each beneficiary. The output dataset includes indicators for each HCC as well as the calculated risk scores. Be sure to save your Enterprise Guide project so you can easily recalculate the scores without repeating any of the initial setup. Thanks again for following along. If you have any more questions about how to further leverage SAS, visit us at sas.com for ways to get in touch.